Have you ever just paused and really thought, at a basic level, if we as humans have actually changed?
Hmm.
Like, do we genuinely learn from the past? Or are we uh, kind of stuck, despite all our tech and everything, just repeating the same old wins and losses?
That's a huge question, isn't it? Feels almost as old as civilization itself. Are there patterns? Some underlying rhythm to it all that history shows us.
Or is it just, like some people say, one damn thing after another?
Exactly. Chaos versus order.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. We take your sources, the really compelling ones, and pull out the biggest ideas, the key nuggets, so you can be instantly, well, brilliantly informed.
And today, we are diving deep into a truly massive work. I mean, a book that takes millennia of human experience and boils it down into these powerful observations. Will and Ariel Durant's The Lessons of History.
Right, and this isn't just any history book. It's what they called a postlude to their huge 10-volume story of civilization.
Yeah, after spending decades chronicling, well, everything, they stepped back and distilled it all. They weren't necessarily aiming for brand new ideas, but for this really inclusive synthesis.
Trying to shine a light on human nature itself, right? And how the past informs the present, maybe even points towards the future.
Precisely. Using the grand sweep of history to understand who we are now and where we might be going.
So our mission today is to unpack some of the most, well, surprising, maybe even humbling, and definitely thought-provoking insights that Durants found.
We're going to look at what they learned about humanity, about governments, morals, even progress itself.
Yeah, get ready for maybe a few aha moments, because this is where they really make you stop and think.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start with maybe a dose of humility. It's something the Durants almost insist on when you even approach history. They ask, what's the real point of studying it?
Right.
Can it actually light up our present, guide us, predict the future? It sounds almost funny coming from people who wrote 10 volumes of the stuff.
It's a great place to start because it immediately throws you off balance, doesn't it? They're incredibly clear. Our grasp of the past, it's inherently incomplete, often inaccurate.
They really lean into that, saying history is, what was the phrase, beclouded by ambivalent evidence and biased historians.
Yeah, and distorted by our own partisanship. They even dropped that line, most history is guessing and the rest is prejudice.
Wow. That's pretty bold for historians.
Yeah.
Basically saying, don't just take it at face value. And they admit historians have to oversimplify. They have to pick just a manageable minority of facts.
From this overwhelming chaos of information, yeah. Plus, think about how fast things change now. Sometimes more happens in, say, 50 years than used to happen in centuries.
Right. Makes drawing straight lines from the past to the future pretty tricky.
Incredibly hazardous, they say. And then there's just pure chance. Randomness.
Oh yeah, they give examples, don't they?
They do, like Alexander the Great just drinking himself to death. Poof, his whole empire fragments.
Yeah.
Or Frederick the Great being saved just because a new Russian czar happened to admire him.
Little things. Quirks of personality, random events.
Exactly. Quirks of character or circumstance, they call them. They can totally derail where a nation is heading. It shows history isn't some neat, predictable machine.
Okay, so if it's incomplete, biased, unpredictable,
Yeah.
why bother? What can history actually give us then?
Well, for the Durants, it's not about getting precise predictions like science. Historiography, writing, history, it's more like an industry. First, digging up the facts.
Okay.
Then it's an art, trying to create some meaningful order out of those facts. And finally, it's a philosophy, seeking perspective, seeking wisdom.
Oh, I like that progression.
Yeah.
Industry, art, philosophy.
And they have this beautiful way of putting it. The present is the past rolled up for action, and the past is the present unrolled for understanding.
Oh, that is good, like a scroll, right.
Mhm.
Action versus understanding.
Exactly. But they also warn, history just smiles at all attempts to force its flow into theoretical patterns or logical grooves. It messes with our neat theories, breaks all our rules. History, they say, is baroque.
Baroque. Complex, ornate, maybe unpredictable.
I think so. So the real goal isn't finding some perfect formula for how people behave. It's learning enough to bear reality patiently and to respect one another's delusions.
Wow. Okay, that's a really humbling way to frame it. We're looking for wisdom, maybe patience, not just facts and formulas.
That's the idea.
So with that humility set, the Durants then zoom way out, like cosmically out. They look at our place, not just in time, but in the whole universe.
Yeah, their first big lesson drawing from geology is just sheer cosmic modesty, human history. It's a tiny, brief spot in space. We're just transient guests.
It really puts things in perspective. They quote Pascal right. about man knowing he's dying even when the universe crushes him.
Exactly. When the universe has crushed him, man will still be nobler than that which kills him because he knows that he is dying, and of its victory the universe knows nothing. It's this stark contrast between our fleeting lives and our unique awareness.
And even here on Earth, they point out, history is basically subject to geology. The ground beneath our feet isn't stable.
Right.
Seas rise, mountains move, rivers change course.
The surface is fluid, yeah.
Man moves, they say, as insecurely as Peter walking on the waves to Christ.
That's vivid. And while we're ingenious, irrigating deserts, air conditioning the Sahara,
Sure, human ingenuity is amazing.
climate is still this huge limiting factor. Too little rain, you get deserts. Too much, you get jungles that are just as hard to manage.
Right. They even speculated that just a 20-degree rise in average temperature could push thriving zones back towards lethargic savagery. Pretty dramatic.
But so geography becomes this matrix of history. Rivers, oceans, they aren't just scenery. They pull people in, they provide transport. Egypt and the Nile, Mesopotamia.
India's great rivers, China's, Italy's, Plato's line about the Greeks being like frogs around a pond, all linked by the Mediterranean.
And that directly connects to power shifts, doesn't it? For 2,000 years, the Mediterranean was the center, the hub of white man's ascendancy, as they put it. But then, after 1492, Columbus, Vasco da Gama, boom, the Atlantic nations rise.
And Venice, Genoa, those great Italian cities decline. It perfectly illustrates that idea. Westward, the course of empire takes its way.
Absolutely.
And the Durants, writing this mid-century, they made a pretty striking prediction about the airplane, didn't they?
They did. They saw it fundamentally changing things. Trade wouldn't be so tied to coasts and rivers anymore.
Which could benefit landlocked countries like Russia, China, Brazil.
Potentially, yeah. And maybe diminish the advantage of those traditional coastal powers. It's fascinating foresight.
But even with all that geological and geographical influence, they still circle back to human agency.
Yes, this is crucial. Despite everything, they insist, man, not the earth, makes civilization. Things like imagination, initiative, sheer industry. That's what counts.
They mentioned modern Israel as an example, right? Overcoming huge natural obstacles.
Exactly, a testament to human will.
Okay, so from the big sweeps of geology and geography, they bring it down to biology. They argue that human history is really just a fragment of biology.
Yeah, that our lives are just a portion of the vicissitudes of organisms on land and sea. All our struggles, our competition, love, war. It's all deeply akin to the seeking, mating, striving, and suffering of other animals.
So the most fundamental lessons of history for them are basically biological laws.
Yeah.
Evolution, struggle for existence.
Survival of the fittest. Those core biological drivers, they argue, underlie everything else.
Okay, so lesson one from biology. Life is competition, not just in business, but the trait of life itself.
Right. It's peaceful when things are plentiful, but it turns violent when resources get scarce. They have that cutting line. Animals eat one another without qualm. Civilized men consume one another by due process of law.
Ouch. And even when we cooperate, they say it's often just a form of competition, to strengthen our group against other groups.
Often, yes, a tool and form of competition. And states, nations, they just amplify our nature. They do good and evil on an elephantine scale. War, they say, is just a nation's way of eating.
Wow. Okay, that's stark. The second biological lesson follows from that. Life is selection.
If you're competing, some win, some lose, some succeed, some fail. We're born, they insist, unfree and unequal. We're subject to our genes, our environment, our group's customs. Nature actually loves difference, they say. It's the raw material for selection and evolution.
And they notice something interesting. Inequality tends to increase as civilization gets more complex.
Yeah, because inventions and advancements tend to strengthen those who are already strong, which leads them to this really challenging idea.
Freedom versus equality.
Exactly. Freedom and equality are sworn and everlasting enemies, and when one prevails, the other dies. If you leave people free, inequality multiplies. Think 19th century England or America.
But if you try to enforce equality,
You have to sacrifice liberty, like Russia after 1917. So they conclude, utopias of equality are biologically doomed. The best we can hope for, maybe, is approximate equality of legal justice and educational opportunity.
that's a tough pill for a lot of modern ideals to swallow. Okay, third biological lesson. Life must breed.
Nature, they say, has this passion for quantity because it's needed for selecting quality. They observe that historically, high birth rates often went with culturally low civilizations and low birth rates with culturally high ones. And in that dynamic, nations with low birth rates get periodically chastened by some more virile and fertile group. It's a cycle.
Which connects straight to Malthus, right? His whole theory about population outpacing food.
Thomas Malthus, yes, 1798. Famine, disease, war, these are the natural checks. He even worried that things like poor relief just encouraged people to have more kids than they could support improvident breeding.
And even though technology, like better farming and contraception, seemed to disprove Malthus in the 19th century.
The Durants argue it just postpones the calamity. And they raise a really controversial point for today, that modern medicine and charity, by keeping the, quote, unfit alive to reproduce, might actually nullify selection.
Yeah, that's definitely uncomfortable territory.
Yeah.
So what's their counsel of humanity given these harsh biological realities?
They figure that industrialization, cities, education, rising living standards, all that stuff, will eventually bring birth rates down naturally, like it did in Europe and North America. But until then,
Contraception.
yeah, they argue it's a counsel of humanity to disseminate the knowledge and means of contraception. Ideally, they state, parentage should be a privilege of health, not a byproduct of sexual agitation.
They also touch on that fear that birth control might be dysgenic, right? Lowering intelligence.
They do, but they mostly dismiss it. They argue intelligence is more about education, opportunity, experience, not just genes. And their final zinger on this is how the birth rate, just like war, may determine the fate of theologies.
Whoa, that idea, birth rates, shaping religion's future, leads us right into another really charged topic, race and history.
Yeah, and they dive right in by outlining some of those influential, though now thoroughly debunked, race theories from the 19th and early 20th centuries.
Starting with Gobineau.
Comte de Gobineau, mid-19th century. He argued for distinct, unequal races, with the Aryan as the source of all civilization, and that mixing blood led to decline.
Then Chamberlain narrowed it down to Teutons.
Houston Stewart Chamberlain, yeah. Even claimed people like Dante and Christ were basically German, and then Madison Grant in 1916 focused it even more tightly on Nordics, worrying they were dying out through wars and intermarriage.
But the Durants just knocked these theories down, right? Using global history itself as the evidence.
Absolutely. They say, look, a Chinese scholar points to their ancient, enduring civilization. A Mexican scholar points to the Maya, Aztecs, Incas. A Hindu scholar points to the Black Dravidians in South India, the Kars at Angkor Wat.
Their counterpoint is simple and powerful. History is colorblind and can develop a civilization in any favorable environment under almost any skin.
Precisely. And they highlight the huge contributions of Semitic peoples. Babylon, Assyria, Phoenicia, Carthage, Islam. Islamic civilization flourished while Europe was in the Dark Ages.
And even the classic civilizations, Greece, Rome, Egypt, they argue it wasn't race, but geography, economics, politics.
Right, with a lot of influence from the East, from Asia Minor, Egypt. They even point out the Nordic Dorians actually destroyed early Greek culture. Greek civilization came later.
So that leads to their sharp summary. The South creates the civilizations, the North conquers them, ruins them, borrows from them, spreads them.
It's a provocative summary. And for places like Africa, if they didn't produce great civilizations, the Durants suggest looking at climate and geography first, not race. They point out many American Negroes achieved amazing things despite 1,000 social obstacles.
So their big conclusion on race is
that its role is preliminary rather than creative. Different groups mix, creating new types, like the English from Celts, Romans, Saxons, Normans, their core idea. It is not the race that makes the civilization, it is the civilization that makes the people.
Ah, so culture shapes the people, not the other way around.
Exactly. Geography, economics, politics create a culture, and that culture creates a type of person over generations.
And they saw America as still being in that mixing phase, a long process.
Still in a fresh racial fusion, yeah. They thought it would take centuries to form a truly distinct American type, language, art, a very long view.
And their solution for racial friction.
They argue that while it starts with ethnic origins, it's mostly fueled by differences in acquired culture. So the cure, a broadened education. Understanding history shows civilization is this massive cooperative product, a shared heritage. A civilized person, they say, sees everyone as representing one of these contributing groups.
A call for deep understanding. Okay, from these huge societal forces, the Durants then zoom right into the individual human, character, and history.
Yeah, and their starting point is that society isn't built on ideals, it's built on human nature. The Constitution of Man rewrites the constitutions of states.
So what is this fundamental human nature, according to them?
They see it as these basic tendencies and feelings. They even list pairs of instincts: action sleep, curiosity indifference, fight flight, mating refusal, and so on. These drives work to preserve the individual, family, or group.
And the really striking part is how constant they think this nature is.
Incredibly constant. Known history shows little alteration in the conduct of mankind. Ancient Greeks acted like modern French, Romans like the English. Our tools change, our means change dramatically.
But the basic motives don't. To act or rest, get or give, fight or flee, be social or private, mate or not.
Those core drives remain pretty much the same across millennia, they argue.
And across social classes, too.
Yes, human nature does not alter as between classes. The poor have the same impulses as the rich, just maybe less opportunity or skill to act on them, and they make that wonderfully cynical point.
About rebels adopting the methods of those they overthrow.
Exactly. Nothing is clearer in history than the adoption by successful rebels of the methods they were accustomed to condemn in the forces they deposed. It happens again and again.
So if human nature is so fixed, how does society change? Where does evolution happen?
Not biologically, they argue, at least not in recorded history. Evolution has been social. It happens through new ideas, new ways of doing things, economic, political, intellectual, moral innovations, and these get passed down through imitation, custom, education.
Custom and tradition are like social versions of instinct.
Kind of, yeah. They provide these ready adjustments to common situations.
Okay, so where do great individuals fit in? The heroes, the geniuses?
They bring them back. The great man regains his place as a real force. Yes, they're products of their time, but they're also agents and voices. A crisis can bring out potential, and their ideas, their decisions, they enter vitally into the course of history.
Like Churchill's speeches being worth regiments, or Napoleon's strategy winning battles.
Or Muhammad's inspiration lifting a whole people. They see these figures, Pasteur, Edison, Marx, Mao, as both effects and causes. Effects of countless causes. Causes of endless effects.
And how does change spread from them?
It's this dynamic. The innovative minority follows the single originative individual, and then the imitative majority follows the minority. So, history in the large is the conflict of minorities. The majority applauds the victor and supplies the human material social experiment.
Fascinating. So intellect drives this, but they also warn about intellect, right? It's not all good.
No, it's double-edged. Intellect can be a dissolvent and destructive power. Most new ideas, they caution, are actually worse than the old traditional ways of doing things. No single person can possibly grasp the full wisdom of generations.
They use that fiery analogy about sex.
Oh, yeah. Sex is a river of fire that must be banked and cooled by 100 restraints if it is not to consume in chaos both the individual and the group. A powerful image for the need for restraint.
Which brings them to this idea of balance in society.
Right. The conservative who resists change. Just as valuable, they argue, as the radical who proposes it. Maybe even more so, like roots are more vital than graphs. New ideas should have to fight their way through objection and opposition.
It's the tension that creates strength.
Exactly. This tension between old and young, tradition and innovation, out of this tension comes a creative tensile strength, a stimulated development, a secret and basic unity and movement of the whole. It's a dynamic process.
Okay, speaking of custom and change, let's get into morals in history. How do they define morals?
As the rule society uses to, well, exhort, not compel like laws, but encourage its members towards behavior that helps the group's order, security, and growth. They mention Jewish communities maintaining peace for ages just through a strong moral code.
And they see morals as both variable and universal. How does that work?
Well, if you just glance at history, moral codes look wildly different, even contradictory. But if you look deeper, they argue, you see this underlying universality and sheer necessity. Morals aren't fixed. They adapt to the environment and the historical stage.
They trace this through economic stages, right? Starting with hunting.
Yeah, the hunting stage required very different virtues for survival: aggression, brutality, greed, sexual readiness, which leads to that amazing line. Presumably, every vice was once a virtue.
Whoa, so our sins might be leftovers from our rise, not signs of a fall.
That's a provocative thought. Then comes the agricultural stage, demanding totally new virtues: hard work, regularity, saving, peace. Children become economic assets, so birth control is seen as immoral.
The family becomes the production unit, father's authority grows, chastity is key.
Monogamy becomes common. The stern code, they call it continence, early marriage, no divorce, lots of kids dominated Christian Europe for 1,500 years and produced some of the strongest characters in history.
But then came the Industrial Revolution. Bang, everything changes.
And fast, people move to factories, away from family, marriage gets delayed, making premarital chastity harder. Cities offer endless temptations and anonymity.
Women get emancipated by joining the workforce. Contraception separates sex from babies.
Paternal authority loses its economic base. Kids rebel and hide in the city crowds. Science starts challenging religion, the test tube over the crozier. Old beliefs weaken, and that old agricultural moral code began to die.
They also connect war directly to morals loosening.
Definitely. They describe Rome after its civil wars, full of soldiers used to killing, citizens whose savings were gone, women dizzy with freedom, divorce and abortion rising. And then they explicitly say this is almost a picture of European and American cities after 2 world wars. A chilling parallel.
It really is.
Yeah.
But they do offer a bit of comfort, maybe, that sin isn't exactly new.
Yes. Sin has flourished in every age, they remind us. They mention homosexuality in ancient Greece and Rome, prostitution being perennial and universal, Luther complaining about free love in 1544 Wittenberg.
Gambling, corruption, cheating. It's always been there.
Man has never reconciled himself to the 10 Commandments, they conclude.
But beyond the headlines, the crimes, follies, and misfortunes that historians love to record.
There were always millions of orderly homes, devoted marriages, men and women kindly and affectionate. The quiet, ordinary goodness of life, which prompts their question, who will dare to write a history of human goodness?
That really flips the perspective. And they reassure us that moral decline doesn't automatically mean collapse is imminent.
Right. It might just be a painful or delightful transition. Civilizations decay quite leisurely, they say. Greece kept producing masterpieces long after morals started shifting. Rome had great figures for centuries after its morals decayed.
Their cheeky comment, may we take as long to fall as did imperial Rome?
Exactly. And looking ahead, they speculate discipline might return via the military. Maybe individualism fades as borders become less secure. Sexual license may cure itself through its own excess.
But they also see good in modern moral freedom.
They do. It is pleasant to be relieved of theological terrors, to enjoy without qualm the pleasures that harm neither others nor ourselves, and to feel the tang of the open air upon our liberated flesh. It's a surprisingly modern take.
For morals, they naturally flow into religion and history. And even as skeptics, they have this respect for it.
A humble respect, yeah. Because they see it working seemingly indispensable in every land and age. It gives comfort, discipline, meaning, dignity, makes promises serious.
Napoleon's quote about it, keeping the poor from murdering the rich.
Right. Since inequality is basically inevitable, they argue some supernatural hope may be the sole alternative to despair. Take that away, and class war is intensified.
That connection between declining religion and rising communism. Heaven and utopia are buckets in a well.
When one goes down, the other goes up. It's a brilliant analogy. And they trace religion's origins back to fear. It was fear that first made the gods, quoting Petronius and Lucretius, fear of the unknown.
Which priests then used to support morality and law, claiming divine origin for codes.
Thoth, Hammurabi, Moses, asserting a higher authority. And the Christian church, they argue, was vital in moderating the chaos after Rome fell, reducing slavery, feuds, expanding charity.
Trying to stand above states like morality over power.
That was the audacious claim. Teaching that unchecked patriotism could be criminal, aiming to be an international moral court.
But that dream broke down.
Nationalism, skepticism, just human flaws. Church officials could be biased, greedy. Politics interfered. The church used fraud, fake relics, forged documents. The Inquisition was a disaster. It preached peace but fueled religious wars, played only a small role in ending slavery.
It sounds like you're saying people need the myths and mysteries.
The masses of mankind desire a religion rich in miracle, mystery, and myth. The church can't just ditch doctrines reason doesn't like. It would alienate millions. So real reconciliation between religion and philosophy. Only if philosophy admits religion's moral role and religion accepts intellectual freedom.
A tough ask.
And the big question, does history actually support belief in a good, intelligent God?
Their answer is a reluctant negative. History, like biology, just shows natural selection. Goodness isn't rewarded, bad things happen constantly, survival is the only test. Natural disasters plus human cruelty suggest either a blind or an impartial fatality.
Not a benevolent force. No. If anything, maybe a dualism, good versus evil, but with no guarantee good wins. The universe has no prejudice in favor of Christ as against Genghis Khan. Oof.
That's heavy. They trace the decline of belief back to Copernicus, realizing our tiny place in the cosmos.
Yeah, that awareness starts it. Then Bacon proclaiming science the new path.
What else fueled the decline?
So many things. The Reformation encouraging individual interpretation, all the different sects popping up, biblical criticism, deism, learning about other cultures' similar myths.
Discovering religious frauds, the brutality of inquisitions and massacres?
Exactly. And the shift from farming, which connected people to cycles of rebirth, to industry, which suggested a cold world machine, plus skeptical thinkers, the Enlightenment, the French Revolution attacking the church, and in modern times, mass warfare, the sheer power of technology.
And I have that fascinating idea that Christianity kind of undermined itself.
By developing a moral sense that eventually couldn't handle its own traditional, vengeful God? Yeah. Hell faded from educated belief. Michelangelo's angry Christ became shocking, their line. The development of the Christian ethic slowly eroded Christian theology. Christ destroyed Jehovah.
Wow, so the big result is secularization.
That's the culminating and critical result of the Industrial Revolution. Christian institutions replaced by secular ones. Laws made by fallible humans, not God. Secular education. Patriotism or political ideologies replacing faith. Holy days become holidays.
But Catholicism hangs on. How?
By appealing to imagination, hope, the senses, its myths comfort the poor, and the commanded fertility of the faithful helps it regain ground demographically. It loses intellectuals but gains converts tired of rational uncertainty, looking for order.
And they even speculate about a post-catastrophe revival, like after Rome fell.
Yeah, if another huge war devastated the West, maybe the church would become the sole hope and guide again.
Because religion keeps coming back.
That's one of their key lessons. Religion has many lives and a habit of resurrection. They list examples throughout history: Egypt, Buddhism, Greece, France.
This cycle of Puritanism and paganism.
Alternating, yeah. Religion and stricter morals gain ground when laws are weak or society feels chaotic. Skepticism and paganism rise when the state is strong and secure. Our time leans pagan, but excesses will bring another reaction. Moral chaos might spark revival.
So is religion actually necessary for morality? They quote Renan and de Maistre, doubting we can manage without it.
And the Durants themselves state it clearly. There is no significant example in history, before our time, of a society successfully maintaining moral life without the aid of religion. Even secular states had its help initially. Communism is the big experiment, maybe using ideology as a temporary religion.
Your final thought on it?
As long as there is poverty, there will be gods.
Okay, from the spiritual, let's pivot hard to the material. Economics and history. They start with Marx, naturally.
Right. History as economics in action. Politics, religion, culture, all rooted in economic reality, according to Marx. The Durants suggest the Industrial Revolution itself drove almost everything. Democracy, feminism, birth control, socialism, secularism, looser morals, even the economic view of history itself.
They joke about the Trojan War being about trade routes, not Helen.
Yeah, the Greeks just used Helen as a fig leaf to cover the naked economic truth.
And looking through that economic lens does reveal a lot, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The Parthenon built with alliance money. Cleopatra's wealth funding Augustus and Roman poets. The Crusades, partly about trade routes. The Medici bankrolling the Renaissance. The French Revolution driven by the middle class needing political power to match their economic power.
But it's not only economics, right? They limit Marx's view.
They do. They say Marx might have underestimated things like pure religious fervor, think of Muslim armies, or intense nationalism, Hitler's troops, Japanese kamikazes, or just mob rage. And sometimes power comes first, military or political, then economic control follows, like the Bolsheviks in Russia or Mongol conquests.
They trace that shift from the small farmer, the man with the hoe,
to the tractor. Rome got weaker when slaves replaced independent farmers. Now, small farms are vanishing again, replaced by huge corporate or state-run operations.
the farmer becomes just an employee.
Pretty much. Agriculture is just another industry, which leads to the rise of the people who manage money.
Ah, the bankers. The man who can manage men manage the men who can manage only things.
And the men who can manage money manage all. From Medici to Morgan, they rise to the top, funding everything, even revolutions. And one secret they understand: history is inflationary, and money is the last thing a wise man will hoard.
Good tip. And what about the profit motive?
Essential, they argue. Every economic system must sooner or later rely upon some form of the profit motive to get people productive. Other things, like slavery or pure ideology, just don't work well or last long.
Okay, here comes another big, maybe uncomfortable lesson: the concentration of wealth.
Natural and inevitable, they call it. Why? Because ability itself isn't evenly distributed. And democracy, ironically, by allowing the most freedom, actually accelerates this concentration.
They say the wealth gap in early America got bigger than in ancient Rome.
Greater than at any time since imperial plutocratic Rome. Startling.
So when wealth gets too concentrated, what happens? History shows two paths.
Either legislation redistributing wealth or revolution distributing poverty.
They use Athens with Solon as the peaceful example.
Exactly. 594 BC,
Yeah.
huge wealth gap, revolt brewing. Solon, a moderate devalued currency, eased debts, taxed the rich more, reformed courts. It saved Athens from revolution, even though extremists on both sides hated it.
But Rome took the other path.
The Senate refused to compromise on land reform. Result, a century of brutal class war. The Gracchi brothers killed, Marius, Catiline, leading eventually to Caesar, civil war, his assassination, and finally Augustus establishing order through dictatorship.
And they see later parallels: the Reformation redistributing church wealth, the French Revolution violently shifting property.
Yes. And interestingly, they saw the U.S. government in the mid-20th century, under FDR and later administrations, as following Solon's peaceful path, achieving a moderate and pacifying redistribution. Their comment: perhaps someone had studied history?
Huh. So the big economic picture is:
This constant rhythm. We conclude that the concentration of wealth is natural and inevitable, and is periodically alleviated by violent or peaceable partial redistribution. It's the slow heartbeat of the social organism, a vast systole and diastole of concentrating wealth and compulsive recirculation.
that heartbeat leads right into socialism in history.
Yeah.
They see it as part of that same rhythm.
Exactly. But they actually start by giving capitalism its due, acknowledging its creative function. Gathering savings, funding industry, rationalizing distribution, creating this huge flow of goods.
Free enterprise, competition, they spur innovation.
Definitely. And there's a kind of basic democracy in how public demand shapes what gets produced.
But they're always abuses.
And history resounds with protests and revolts against them. Price fixing, exploitation, irresponsible wealth. These complaints are ancient, they say, and they've led to socialist experiments again and again.
Going way back, like ancient Sumeria or Egypt.
Yeah, Sumeria around 2100 BC had a state-run economy. Egypt, under the Ptolemies, nationalized industries, controlled trade, banking, made Egypt super rich, funded culture like the Library of Alexandria.
But it eventually decayed. Corruption, high taxes, strikes.
Until Rome took over, and Rome itself, under Diocletian, around 301 AD, facing crisis, tried massive state control, price fixing, wage controls, state industries, a war economy.
Where internal freedom shrinks as external danger grows.
Precisely. But it collapsed under bureaucracy and taxes, leading eventually to serfdom.
China tried it multiple times too.
Emperor Wuti, Wang Mang, Waganshi, nationalizing land or resources, controlling prices, state managing commerce to help workers. But these often ended badly due to corruption, invasion, natural disasters, or pushback from the rich.
What about the Incas? That lasted a long time.
The longest-lasting regime of socialism, they call it. Highly organized, everyone a state employee, apparently stable and content until the Spanish arrived.
And the Jesuits in Paraguay.
Another fascinating case. 200,000 indigenous people in a socialistic community for 130 years. Managed everything, 8-hour workdays, recreation, no death penalty. The people were docile and content, fought fiercely for it until politics ended the experiment.
So modern socialism really kicked off with the Industrial Revolution's horrors.
The greed and brutality, yeah. Child labor, slums. Marx and Engels gave it its theoretical framework, the Manifesto and Das Kapital. They expected it to happen first in England, the most industrialized place.
But it happened in Russia. Why?
Because the Tsarist government was a mess, defeated in war, economy collapsed, angry soldiers came home, communism took hold in chaos, basically as a war economy, to survive internal disorder and external attack.
And they think it might only survive through fear of war. Peace would erode it.
That's their speculation. Given a generation of peace, it would presumably be eroded by the nature of man, which leads to their really interesting idea about synthesis.
Right, this Hegelian blend. Socialism in Russia bringing back individual incentives.
While capitalism in the West accepts more socialistic legislation, wealth redistribution, the welfare state.
So government's role grows in the West, the private sector shrinks relatively, but capitalism still drives production. funded by high taxes on the rich, providing public services.
That's the convergence they saw happening, leading to that great line. The fear of capitalism has compelled socialism to widen freedom, and the fear of socialism has compelled capitalism to increase equality. East is west and west is east, and soon the twain will meet.
A fascinating prediction. Okay, let's move to government and history. Pope said only fools contest forms of government, and the Durants kind of agree.
In a way, yeah. History has a good word to say for all of them, they write. The core issue they see is freedom versus order.
We love freedom, but need limits.
Exactly. The first condition of freedom is its limitation. Make it absolute and it dies in chaos. So, government's number one job: establish order. Organized force is the only alternative to chaos.
And power tends to centralize, like with monarchs or federal government.
Naturally converges, yeah. They see it happening in the U.S. and even internationally.
Which form is most natural? Monarchy.
They suggest it is, like a father figure. And if you just look at prevalence and how long it lasts, monarchy wins. Democracies look like hectic interludes.
They praise Rome's Pax Romana under Augustus as a huge achievement.
The greatest achievement in the history of statesmanship, yes. 210 years of peace across a vast area. And they loved the adoptive monarchy that followed for a while, picking the ablest successor: Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, the finest succession.
Until Marcus Aurelius chose his actual son Commodus and things went bad.
Right. And monarchy has other downsides: succession wars, stupid heirs, nepotism, extravagance. Even Louis XIV, a paragon in some ways, people cheered when he died. And modern states are just too complex for one ruler.
So if not monarchy, then what?
Yeah.
Oligarchy. Rule by a minority.
They argue most governments have been oligarchies. Rule by birth, religion, wealth. It's hard for a true majority to organize and act. And since ability is concentrated in a minority,
Minority rule is inevitable, like wealth concentration.
that's their controversial take. The majority can only swap one ruling minority for another.
What about aristocracy? Rule by birth.
They see it as maybe the sanest alternative in theory. It trains leaders, preserves culture and standards, provides stability. But aristocrats rarely create great art. They prefer the art of life, and they fall when they get too greedy, oppressive, or war-hungry.
Okay, what about revolutions? Do they work? Do they achieve their aims?
The Durants are cautious. Often they argue economic changes would have happened anyway without the violence. Think America's rise or England's industrial changes. To break sharply with the past is to court the madness.
Tradition provides sanity.
The sanity of a group lies in the continuity of its traditions. Violent revolutions destroy more wealth than they redistribute, and inequality just pops back up quickly with a new ruling group.
So real revolution is internal.
The only real revolution is in the enlightenment of the mind and the improvement of character. The only real revolutionists are philosophers and saints, a very high bar.
Okay, let's talk democracy. It's pretty modern in its full form, right? Adult suffrage.
Very modern. Ancient Athens had limits: slaves, women, many workers excluded, and even that limited democracy had critics.
Plato and Socrates worried about it becoming mob rule.
Yeah, descending into chaos of class violence, cultural decadence, and moral degeneration. Plato saw unchecked freedom leading to anarchy, then dictatorship. The Durants cite the horrific violence in Corcyra during the Peloponnesian War as an example: fathers killing sons, like revolutionary Paris. This class war weakened Athens.
And Roman democracy ended similarly. Oligarchs got rich, displaced farmers became an angry mob in the city.
Money corrupted politics, factions bought votes, used murder, leading to civil wars, the Gracchi, Marius, Caesar, and finally, people accepting Augustus's dictatorship just to get peace. The Platonic wheel had come full turn.
So why did American democracy work, at least initially?
Had advantages: British legal heritage, Protestantism, tons of free land, not much government at first. Owning land gave farmers an economic footing for political freedom, fostered individualism.
But those conditions have changed.
Many have vanished, they warn. We live in cities, workers are dependent, no more free land. War makes individuals feel helpless. Economic complexity concentrates wealth and power.
And democracy is hard, requires intelligence.
The most difficult of all forms of government, they say, needing widespread intelligence. We forgot to make ourselves intelligent when we made ourselves sovereign. Ouch.
Education spreads, but intelligence gets retarded by the fertility of the simple. Wow. And ignorance is easy to manipulate.
It is. They also raise that tricky question about democracy and art. Has it led to a debasement of art by losing aristocratic standards? Are the bizarreries of modern art a sign of decay or just searching for new forms?
But despite all these criticisms, they still see democracy's value.
Absolutely. It's done Less harm and more good than any other form. It brings energy, freedom of thought, science, enterprise, breaks down privilege, provides abundance like never before. Spreading education and health is vital.
The rights of man aren't about holding office, but having the chance.
The rights of entry, yeah. The opportunity to be tested for fitness. A right is a privilege that's actually good for the group, for the individual to have.
But they end with warnings. Threats to democracy today.
Big ones. Constant war could erode freedoms via military power. Race or class war could replace debate with violence. And if the economy fails to spread wealth, the road to dictatorship will be open to anyone promising security. A martial government could engulf us. Very sobering.
That warning about war leads us right into their next section. History and war. And their opening is brutal.
War as one of the constants of history, not reduced by civilization or democracy. In over 3,400 years of recorded history, only 268 years saw no war. Just staggering.
They see it as the ultimate form of competition and selection. Heraclitus's war is the father of all things.
Yeah, driving ideas, inventions, states. Peace is just an unstable equilibrium held only by dominance or a balance of power.
And the causes are the same as for individuals. Greed, aggression, pride, desire for resources, mastery.
Pretty much. The state just acts out our instincts without the restraints individuals accept, because there's no effective superstate to enforce rules between nations.
Nationalism is individual pride scaled up, fueling conflict.
And states deliberately whip it up when they see conflict coming.
And war itself has changed, from aristocratic contest to total struggle of peoples.
Especially in the 20th century. Communication, transport, weapons, propaganda involving whole populations, mass destruction. One war can wipe out centuries of progress. Even if it spurs technology, the inventions are deadly.
This leads to that amazing dialogue they create. The general versus the philosopher. The military view.
War as the necessary final arbiter. Most generals and rulers see it that way. Sure, men die, but more die in accidents, and many lack discipline anyway. War gives an outlet.
If they must die sooner or later, why not let them die for their country?
In the anesthesia of battle and the aura of glory, plus long peace weakens a nation's martial muscles. Morality has to step aside for self-preservation.
And the general applies this to the Cold War context they were in, protecting the West from communism.
Right. Arguing that communism with old birth rates and new weapons is spreading. If it's not stopped, the West gets encircled. So isn't it wiser to fight now, fight over there, sacrifice some lives to keep America secure? That, the general says, is fully in accord with the lessons of history.
But then the philosopher comes back hard.
Yes. Acknowledging the historical pattern, but saying the stakes are infinitely higher now with modern weapons, and, crucially, there is something greater than history.
We have to challenge the bad precedents. Apply the golden rule to nations, like Ashoka did.
Or Augustus, choosing restraint. Let us refuse to make 100 Hiroshimas in China, quoting Burke. Magnanimity in politics is not seldom the truest wisdom.
And the philosopher paints this picture of a different path. A president proposing real dialogue, arms reduction, cultural exchange.
A huge gamble based on trust, pledging sincerity. If we lose, the result could not be worse than traditional policies. If you and we succeed, we shall merit a place in the grateful memory of mankind. A powerful plea.
But the general gets the last word.
The chilling last word, smiling, saying the philosopher forgot history and human nature. Some conflicts are too deep. World order comes from decisive victory, like Rome imposed. Peace is unnatural. States only unite when attacked from outside.
Leading to that sci-fi ending. Interplanetary war, uniting Earth.
Then and only then will we of this Earth be one. A truly provocative, almost darkly humorous end to that debate.
Wow. Okay, that intense discussion leads to their final big section. Growth and decay. How do civilizations rise and fall?
First, they define civilization. Social order promoting cultural creation. It needs political order, laws, morals, and economic order to allow culture, ideas, art, manners to flourish. It's a delicate web.
And history is full of ruins. So is death inevitable. Are there patterns?
They dismiss precise cycles like Virgil's eternal recurrence. History repeats only in outline and in the large. Why? Because basic human nature changes so slowly, leading to similar responses to core challenges.
Hunger, danger, sex. We react similarly over time.
In basic ways, yes. But in complex societies, individuals become more unique, situations are novel, simple instinct isn't enough. Reason spreads, outcomes get less predictable. There is no certainty that the future will repeat the past. Every year is an adventure.
They mention attempts to create grand theories of cycles, like St. Simon or Spengler.
Right. St. Simon saw alternating organic periods, unified, purposeful, and critical periods, chaotic, individualistic. Spengler saw civilizations having life cycles, like seasons moving from unity to disorganization.
So what actually causes decay, according to the Durants? It's not some preordained fate.
No mystical destiny. Civilizations decline, they argue, because their leaders, political or intellectual, fail to meet the challenges of change.
Challenges can be external, like climate change, exhausted resources, losing markets, new trade routes, bypassing old centers.
Exactly, like Venice declining after 1492. Or challenges can be internal.
Like slave labor replacing free labor, crushing taxes, wealth getting so concentrated it leads to class war, cities becoming overcrowded and poor.
All of those, forcing governments into welfare or riot situations.
And then there's cultural decay. As education spreads, old beliefs weaken.
Theologies lose credibility, life gets secular. Morality loses its supernatural backing as people see its human origins. Critical thinking dissolves religious buttresses. This can lead to an age of weary skepticism and Epicureanism.
Where people just focus on luxury, corruption, family breaks down, patriotism fades.
Yeah, few feel it's beautiful and honorable to die for one's country. And the final blows, often a mix. Leadership failure, internal fighting, losing a big war, invasion from outside, combined with barbarism welling up from within.
It sounds pretty bleak. Is anything saved?
Yes, this is crucial. While the frame dies, Greek civilization is not really dead. It survives in the memory of the race. Homer has more readers now than ever. This selective survival of creative minds is the most real and beneficent of immortalities.
So civilization migrates, people pick up their tools, arts, memories, and move on.
Resilient humanity rebuilds elsewhere. If education preserves those memories, civilization travels. Rome absorbed Greece, America absorbed Europe, and now uses technology to pass it on globally like never before.
Civilizations are like generations of the racial soul passing the torch.
Exactly. An aging culture hands its heritage down. Commerce, print, now digital tech. They bind nations and civilizations together, preserving for all what each has given. It's a connected legacy.
Which brings us right to their final question. Is progress real? Or is it just every generation boasting it's the best?
If human nature hasn't changed, maybe tech advances are just new means of achieving old ends. Science is neutral, heals or kills. Bacon's knowledge is power might be too simple. Maybe older, art-focused eras were wiser.
They list the downsides of modernity pretty frankly, don't they? Comfort weakening us, cars helping criminals, speed stressing us out.
The same trousered apes at 2,000 miles an hour as when we had legs. Medicine prolonging illness sometimes. So much information, but maybe less peace. Cities improve life for many, but still have terrible slums.
And the deep moral questions linger. Has ditching theology given us a strong enough natural ethic? Are we just intolerant in new ways? Are manners worse? Laws too soft on crime? Too much freedom for our own good?
Are we heading back to the church for sheer discipline? Did philosophy fail by dismissing myth, quoting Ecclesiastes? He that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow.
They even question aesthetic progress. Is modern art or music truly better than the classics? Is contemporary art replacing order with chaos, signaling decay?
It's a tough critique, but they admit history can support many views, so they try for an objective definition of progress.
Which is
The increasing control of the environment by life. Simple, applies to all living things.
But progress isn't steady or universal. It goes backward sometimes. Different nations progress at different rates.
Exactly. Regressions happen. Russia might progress while England declines. Tech can advance while art recedes. The real question, has the average person gained more control over their life?
And comparing modern life to primitive life, despite all our flaws.
We do not come off quite forlorn. Millions have reached higher mental and moral levels. The noble savage was romanticized. Primitive life had plenty of violence, superstition, disease.
Longevity has tripled. If undertakers are miserable, progress is real.
Yeah, yes. And we've mostly beaten famine in developed nations. Science has reduced superstition. Technology has spread comfort, education, leisure incredibly widely.
Modern government, with all its faults, is better than ancient forms. Broader rights, legal protections.
They prefer it. Habeas corpus, jury trials, basic freedoms, women's rights. Are our morals really worse than ancient figures like Alcibiades? Are presidents worse than Pericles? Are universities, libraries, publishing? Unprecedented. They even argue Shakespeare surpasses the Greek dramatists.
So compared to the past, even the Golden Ages, We should feel grateful.
They think the Founding Fathers, or Voltaire, would call us ingrates for our blindness to our good fortune in living today. A strong call for perspective.
And we shouldn't worry that our civilization will end.
Life needs fresh forms. Challenges might even reinvigorate us. And the core achievements survive. A great civilization does not entirely die.
Fire, tools, language, writing, art, family, morality, charity, teaching, these pass on,
They're the connective tissue of human history.
which makes education the key.
If education is the transmission of civilization, we are unquestionably progressing. Civilization has to be learned fresh each generation. Our greatest achievement, our unprecedented expenditure, in the provision of higher education for all. We know more, on average, than any previous age.
So progress is real because our heritage grows. We stand on a higher pedestal.
We're born to a richer heritage, born on a higher level of that pedestal, which the accumulation of knowledge and art raises. The heritage grows, and we grow as we receive it.
History, then, is the creation and recording of that heritage. Progress is its growth and use.
And if you study it positively, the past stops being depressing. It becomes this celestial city, a spacious country of the mind, full of brilliant people still teaching us.
So after this incredible deep dive into the lessons of history, what does it mean for you listening right now? The Durants end by saying the meaning in life is the meaning we put into it.
Let it be our pride that we ourselves may put meaning into our lives, and sometimes a significance that transcends death.
Knowing all this history, this complexity, this unpredictability, how do you put meaning into your own life? How can you add to that pedestal of human heritage?
Yeah. What insight or question from today really stands out for you? What piece of this huge, inexhaustible legacy might you pick up and carry forward, adding your own thread to the story?
Something definitely worth thinking about.